In today's Art Historian, we're going to be talking about something a little different. As we move toward the holidays, a lot of us are going to be baking things for family and friends, like cookies, pies, and cakes. But have you ever thought about food as art? Today we're going to be learning a little bit about the history of pies, pumpkin pies in particular, and discussing the idea that food can be art as well. By the way, this is not meant to be a cooking tutorial. If you'd like to try baking at home, make sure you use a recipe, follow the instructions, and if you need help, be sure to ask someone. Please use cookie cutters instead of a knife to cut out any shapes from dough the way I'm doing here. I didn't have any leaf-shaped cookie cutters, so I went ahead and used a knife. But it's really not the safest thing to do. So remember, ask for help if you need any. People have been eating pies for thousands of years. Historians have traced the earliest pies back to ancient Egypt, where they made pie-like pastries from grains, then filled them with honey or fruit. The pharaoh Ramesses II had pies painted on the walls of his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The Greeks and Romans made pies as well, and loved to bake them with fillings of meat, such as fish, oysters, and goat. They even gave pies as offerings to their gods. The oldest pie recipe we know about is a Roman recipe for rye-crusted goat, cheese, and honey pie. As the Roman Empire spread across the ancient world, they brought their cooking traditions with them and adopted new recipes from the lands they conquered. You may have heard the rhyme, "Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before the king?" During medieval times, this type of pie really existed. Live birds, rabbits, frogs, or other creatures were sealed inside a baked pie crust, then burst out when the crust was cut. This was a hugely popular spectacle at feasts and banquets. Sometimes even small people were sealed inside pies. The entertainers then jumped out of the pies to dance along the table, doing tricks or reciting poetry. Pies, at that time spelled P-Y-E, were still mostly made of meat. The pie crust was called a coffin because it was baked in a long, narrow, coffin-shaped pan. As time passed, people began to eat fruit pies, also called tarts or pasties, as well. Supposedly, the first cherry pie was baked in the 1500s for Queen Elizabeth I. English colonists brought pies to America. As local Native American tribes taught the colonists which fruits and berries were safe to eat in the New World, the colonists began baking these into pies. They used shallow, round pans to stretch the ingredients a little farther, and pie crust came to be called crust instead of a coffin. As settlers moved across America, favorite regional pies became traditions at holidays and family gatherings. In the South, people favored pecan pie or sweet potato pie, and in the North, people loved pumpkin pie. And how exactly did pumpkin pie become a Thanksgiving tradition? Well, Native Americans in the Northeast grew pumpkins and roasted them. Historians believe that these tribes brought pumpkins as gifts for the Pilgrims and taught them how to cook them. The Pilgrims in Plymouth Plantation likely cooked pumpkins by roasting them over a fire or by filling a hollowed-out pumpkin shell with milk, honey, and spices, then cooking it over the ashes. There were no real pumpkin pies at the first Thanksgiving. We believe that the Pilgrims had not yet made ovens that were necessary to bake the crusts. But several decades later, in the 1670s, recipes for pumpkin pies were appearing in English cookbooks. But it wasn't until 1796, after the Revolution, that the first American cookbook was published. American Cookery by an American Orphan, written by Amelia Simmons, included a pumpkin pie recipe. Today, many people still include pumpkin pie in their Thanksgiving celebrations. So as you can see, pies have been around for thousands of years. But I'd like to move on from history and think about pies and food in general in a different way. I think food can also be art. If you put care and love into making a pie, or baking a cookie, or decorating a cake, you put a little bit of yourself into it as well. Food is meant to be eaten, so obviously it won't last forever, like a statue in a museum. Perhaps food is a more humble form of art. It's something that can fill your senses, sight and smell, taste and touch, and fill your stomach as well. You can't taste a painting, or at least you shouldn't try. But you can taste and smell a delicious loaf of bread baking in the oven. This holiday season, as you cook for your family, think about the food that you're preparing. And instead of seeing it as just food or just something that's going to be eaten later, try to think about how you can make it a work of art for your family and your loved ones. Thank you for listening, and have a happy Thanksgiving.